Hello, everyone. Welcome to this session of the first European Online Forum, which is part of the World AI Conference 2021 in Shanghai. And I have the honor to moderate this panel with four exceptional speakers today. And the title is Artificial Intelligence. Does consciousness matter? So AI is trying since its inception to replicate human intelligence. And these include several characteristics, among which the most challenging one has been consciousness. Is it possible to create an artificial consciousness? If so, how to do it? And do we really need consciousness to create a general AI? In this panel, we'll explore why consciousness matter or not so much, and what is the state of the art of the research from different perspectives and branch of sciences. Myself, brief introduction. My name is Davide Cali. I'm the CEO of Expand, who's organizing the European Online Forum. And I'm also the co-founder and chair of the Euro-China Federation for AI, ECF.ai. And I'm gonna do a quick round of introduction. So I will ask the speakers to introduce themselves, just a few words for each one of them. So first, Federico Faggin, with whom we imagined this panel, is really an Italian I'm proud of. I'm from Italy. Even if he moved to the United States many years ago, he invented so many technology. He's one of the father of the microelectronics, I believe. And recently, he also wrote a book called Silicon, where it tells his story, the different lives that he had during his life, and also what he's doing right now. Please, Federico, just please introduce yourself for the audience.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, I was born in Italy and educated there. First work experiences in Italy. I came in the United States in Silicon Valley in 1968. I developed the silicon gate technology, the new way of making MOS devices, which became the way to do all of them. Designed all the early microprocessor, the 4004 in 1971. Today is the 50th anniversary of the 4004, first microprocessor in the world. Then I started an entrepreneurial career, started Zilog, developed the Z80 and other products, and started Synaptics, working in neural networks, and then developed these touchpads and touch screens. And for the last 30 years, I've been working on consciousness and the nature of consciousness. I have a foundation, the Federico and Davide Faggin Foundation, for the study of consciousness.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. And after, I want to introduce Professor Nick Bostrom. He's a philosopher and is very famous for his ethical contribution on AI. And I want to say that one of the books I loved the most was Super Intelligence. I still remember many parts of the book. So please, Nick, if you can introduce yourself.
Well, I'm a professor at Oxford University, where I head the Future of Humanity Institute, which is a multidisciplinary research center focusing on big picture questions for humanity. And AI has been a big focus, you could say obsession really, over the last 10 or 15 years. And I'm currently doing some work you've heard earlier to superintelligence, which talked a bit about both the promise and the risks of AI when it reaches human and then superhuman levels. More recently, I've been working with some colleagues on the ethics of digital minds, that is thinking about if AI systems become conscious and they attain some moral status, how then can we envisage a world where say humans and different forms of digital minds can happily coexist?
Okay, great. And after, I want to introduce Professor Giacomo. He's one of the most important physicists in Italy. And I remember a few years ago, I read one of his sentences in an Italian newspaper saying that teletransportation is already a reality. So that really caught my attention at that time. So please, Giacomo, if you can introduce yourself.
Thank you. I am professor at the University of Pavia in Italy, where I teach quantum theory and quantum foundation, and I lead a research group working on quantum information and quantum foundations. Among relevant results, we got a derivation of quantum theory as an information theory, starting from 6 practical principles we call operational principles. And thereafter, a derivation of free quantum field theory in the same way. I also work with experimentalists abroad as a member of the Center for Photonic Communication and Computing at Northwestern University in Illinois, which I have been visiting regularly since '94 every year. Last and not least, more recently, I have been involved with Federico Faggin in proposing our quantum theory of consciousness. I am a fellow of the Medical Physical Society of the Optical Society of America and member of the Accademia Istituto Lombardo of Science and Letters in Milano. So I have also philosophical interests.
Okay, well, it sounds really fascinating. I cannot wait to start the debate, actually. And then last but not least, Professor Filippo Fabbin, who also I'm honored to call my friend, and also we are colleague at ECF, and he's professor of design innovation at the Tonji University, and for also director of the Lab of Sustainable AI. And he has moving between corporate research in IBM and academic research for quite some time. And he's a philosopher, but also a very strong IT AI expert. So please, Filippo, if you can say a little bit more about yourself.
I think you talked enough, but okay, I'm going to.
Yeah, I know you do well.
I come from IBM Research. I was working in the artificial intelligence team for many years, and then I moved back from the corporation to the university. I was working for the university, Gregorian University Rome. It's a Jesuit university. I was teaching basically philosophy, especially philosophy of mind and mathematical logic. And then I moved back to IBM. I was the general manager of the Business Innovation Center in Milano, Rome. And finally, for a number of reasons, I was invited to come here to China. And I was teaching mainly in computer science schools. And then since a couple of years in this fascinating school, which is the College of Design and Innovation. And that's all I would say. I forgot to tell that my main interests are machine learning, of course, ethical AI, and I would add as well AI art recently. Preparing, we had a conference about AI art, a very large one. It was quite successful. And now I'm preparing a very large exhibition here in Shanghai concerning AI art.
Okay, thank you, Filippo, very much. Okay, so I think now the audience know a little bit about you and probably understand why I'm so excited about this panel. And we've had a previous conversation with some member, and I'm really very excited. Actually, let's start the discussion. And I would start with 3 short questions. I will ask you to keep the answer very synthetic, possibly under, let's make a challenge, 30 seconds answer. So the audience can understand where each one of you stand on regarding the topic we're gonna debate tonight. So the first question is, what is your definition of consciousness? So please, Federico, maybe you can answer first.
Okay. Well, to me, consciousness is the capacity to have an experience based on sensations and feelings, what philosophers call qualia. So that is the essence of what consciousness is. And there are 4 classes of feelings: physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual.
Okay, wow, that would require another debate already, but we say we keep 30 seconds. So Nick, what is your definition of consciousness?
I don't really have one, but I take it to be the thing that we refer to when we are designating our own mental states, as it were, from a first-person perspective. So the way that our experience feels like from the point of view of the subject having the experience.
So like a subjective consciousness, basically, like a perception.
Yeah, I mean, it's a notoriously a murky terrain to try to define these things, and philosophers have tried for a long time to pinpoint it. But I think it's like the things that the space of things that include physical sensations, pain, thoughts, feelings, smells, aspirations, desires, when they're sort of active in consciousness.
Okay, very interesting. And Giacomo, can you answer us?
Okay, consciousness, or if you want, let's say awareness, is our direct experience of the outside and the inside, including emotions and any stream of thoughts. And I quote David Chalmers, consciousness is something that cannot be explained in terms of functioning, in terms of mechanism. Chalmers contrasts this so-called hard problem with the easy problem, which is in all science can be tackled in terms of functioning, namely a mechanistic approach. Such an approach is useless for the problem of experience. For better understanding what I mean by experience, I always use the paradigm of the zombie, which functions exactly like us, but has no experience of what it does. So this is to understand that the experience has nothing to do with the functioning. It's something completely different.
All right. So not functional answer. And
yes.
Filippo, what about your position? How you define in 30 seconds?
I refuse to have a definition of consciousness.
Well, this is interesting too. Okay, tell me why.
Simply because it's a concept so heavily loaded from a philosophical point of view. And basically, it's a concept which we should be careful about this. It's a concept emerging just in the modern age, starting from Descartes. In the previous philosophical tradition, the notion of consciousness doesn't appear. In any case, if you want my own definition, I would use the following sentence: is a stream of your personal life.
Okay, so it's very similar to Nick's position about the perception, and basically you're saying that it's a cultural construct. So yes, maybe we should not even have this debate today, or we do not have it before Descartes, maybe. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, so the second short question that I want to make, I know they are simple, short, but actually very challenging. What is your definition of intelligence, Federico?
Really, I contrast artificial intelligence with natural intelligence, since this is also one of the topics of this conference. Artificial intelligence is simply the ability to perceive the environment and act properly within that environment through toward a goal. It includes machine learning, and it includes also problem solving. Natural intelligence, on the other hand, is machine intelligence, but augmented by what consciousness brings to intelligence, which is the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual intelligence that comes from it.
Okay. So you already introduced a distinction between artificial and natural. Yeah. Actually, I find it interesting that we call it natural intelligence. It's the same like natural language, right? It described a very strong point of view from the IT people, right? So, well, it's definitely subjective. I always find it very, very, very funny. Nick, what is your definition of intelligence?
I think just the ability to solve a wide range of complex in a complex environment, maybe with limited information. So it would include learning, reasoning, perceiving, communicating, action planning, building models of the world that can then use to guide action.
So it's functional. It's functional.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somehow, maybe. Yeah. Okay, I understand. I think that it matched the perception of the conscious. Actually, they are kind of similar. And Giacomo, what is your definition of intelligence?
Intelligence means not just achieving a task optimally, but also understanding the process for performing the task. This is not the case, for example, of artificial neural networks, or the case of solving a problem by minimization method or brute force trying a large set of moves, like, for example, in the Chinese game of Go.
Yeah.
Therefore, understanding is crucial to define intelligence, the definition of intelligence.
Okay, very interesting. I actually want to add a little comment because, of course, we are between, ideally between China and Europe. I want to give one perspective about actually what happened in China when the computer AlphaGo defeated their national game, right? That everybody thought it was impossible to beat, and in the world there was little interest, but in China, I think 100 million people, they actually follow what was happening. It was what I could call, like, not only me, actually carefully call it the Sputnik moment, right? It was the moment that actually China realized, oh, there is AI, right? Before, it was really something obscure for specialists. And after that event that was widely transmitted, actually, the understanding of AI in the country changed, and it started a race. Since that moment, so many resources have been thrown. It was 2017, I think, right? And then even they made a plan to become a leader of AI in 2030. So it actually, really, the spark happened with Go. So I just wanted to tell this anecdote. Maybe some people in the West, they don't know how relevant was that moment. Similar to when the Americans saw the Sputnik, basically, and they realized they had to race into space, and then they land on the moon the first time. And Filippo, what is your definition of intelligence, or you refuse to define that too?
I'm very close to Nick again. I would say it's our ability to adapt ourselves to a complex environment, but I would say it doesn't exist as individual intelligence. It's always embedded into a form of life which is made by languages, which is made by traditions, which is made by rituals, ceremonies, organizations, and so on. So, I mean, again, I'm very skeptical about defining intelligence in terms of individual intelligence. Individual intelligence exists only to the extent that there is a collective and social intelligence, which is embedded into formal life.
I actually agree on the collectiveness. I think one of the biggest shortcomings of any strategy is that they attack the problem one by one, like an entity that lives isolated. But if we look at a human intelligence, which is the easiest form we can study, is always collective. There is no possibility without social intelligence, cultural intelligence, historical intelligence. Well, thanks for answering, because it's not easy. And the truth is that I believe there is not a theory widely accepted about intelligence, right? We use this word a lot, and we even try to measure it, but there is not a widely accepted theory. We have a theory of information, but not about intelligence. So the last quick question is, what is the relationship between consciousness and intelligence, Federico?
Yeah, to me, consciousness provides a supervisory role to intelligence. Of course, it's also part of intelligence. But consciousness provides the creative comprehension, ethical, the values, and they all come also from society. They're not just individual. I agree with Filippo. And these are all non-algorithmic properties of consciousness, and therefore they are off limits to artificial intelligence.
Okay, great. And Nick, what is the relationship? I think I probably guessed one, but please tell me what is your opinion about the relationship.
Well, I'm a computationalist, so I think that one can, in principle, have consciousness arising if the correct computational process is implemented. I think our brains implement certain computational processes, and that creates intelligence, but computers could also implement processes of the right form, the right computations, that then would give rise to consciousness. Now, exactly how tight the connection is between systems that demonstrate high intelligence and systems that are conscious is a difficult question. I think certainly there seems to be a lot of intelligent behavior that can go on without consciousness. I mean, even we humans do most of our cognitive work beneath the surface of consciousness. Like a good idea pops up into your mind, maybe, right? Mm-hmm. But how did that good idea get formulated and selected from all the other possible ideas you might have thought of? So that work would be done by your conscious mind. So I think certainly a lot of intelligence can be done without consciousness, but whether you could get the full same repertoire of behavior as a human without that thing also being conscious is something I'm agnostic about at this moment.
Okay. And Giacomo, what about you? What is the relationship between consciousness and intelligence?
In my opinion, there is no true intelligence without consciousness. Understanding the achievement of a task is a genuine experience, not just the functioning as achieving the task itself. Otherwise, if you think about any mechanism that we build and that performs a task perfectly would be considered intelligent. So, which is not the case, it's just a mechanical apparatus. So intelligence needs consciousness to exist. Otherwise, it's not intelligence, it's just good performance.
So it's a fundamental quality.
Yes.
Okay.
The fundamental quality, agree.
And Filippo, can you answer?
I don't think I can answer to this question simply because I refuse to define.
Give the first definition before. I was actually suspecting that, but I wanted to give you the chance to say it. Okay. Right.
But I will be more precise in a while along the discussion. Anyway, I totally agree with the concepts expressed by Professor Faggin, by Federico.
Okay.
Totally agree. In the sense that, in my view, an artificial intelligence is an oxymoron. It's a contradiction. I mean, we cannot have an artificial intelligence.
Why?
But maybe for different reasons from Professor Faggin. But basically because I think that the fundamental feature of human intelligence consists in being embodied, first of all, in this body, in being embedded in this environment, which is a cultural and social environment, and in being continuously extended by what we invent. Technology is co-constitutive in the sense that technology invents the subject in the same moment in which we invent the technology. So, I mean, it's a complex answer, and I will develop this answer during the panel. I hope so.
Okay, I understand. Let's start some question to spark the discussion. Federico, I have a question for you. Do you think, because you were mentioned before, artificial natural intelligence, do you think a digital computer can become conscious?
The short answer is no. And the reason is will be developed, I'm sure, throughout this this panel. The theory that Dariano and I put forth is that fundamentally consciousness is a quantum phenomenon, cannot exist in space-time the way we understand reality, exist in the Hilbert space, which is the description of quantum or the quantum reality, and as such, and it is the capacity, therefore, of a system, of a quantum system, to have an experience based on qualia, based on sensations and feelings, and know itself, know the experience, which is like it's like something that physics has never considered possible, because physics only studies the outer aspects of reality. So here we have a quantum systems, and then Giacomo will probably expand on this, that when it is in a pure state, in a pure quantum state, can actually experience its own state. And so that's what consciousness is in this definition. If that is true, clearly it is impossible for a classical computer based on bits, instead of based on quantum bits which are entangled, to be conscious. And the crucial property of a quantum system is that quantum information, quantum state, cannot be copied, cannot be clonable. And whereas you can copy the state of a computer. So the privacy of your experience, which is a fundamental property of consciousness, is preserved in a quantum systems, but it's not preserved in a classical system, because you can copy a program, you can copy the essence of a computer, which is its bit arrangement, anytime. So it's impossible for a computer. I go back to the short answer. No.
Yeah. We cannot upload ourselves. Actually, I always hope that could guarantee me immortality, but according to you, it's not going to happen.
But actually, according to me, our consciousness is immortal.
Okay,
so it's the body that is mortal.
It's already.
Yeah. So actually, it's much better than having to download your consciousness in a computer and live forever.
Okay, well, that we enter the mysticism there. So I think it's gonna be very complicated. And Nick, do you have a comment, or because I remember you described the scenario when the machine actually surpassed human intelligence, right? So I guess your idea is a little different.
Yeah, it's so I don't subscribe at all to the view that consciousness or intelligence really hinges in any way on the properties of quantum physics. I think our brains are basically information processing systems that are designed to take in information that we get from our cameras and our microphones and our tactile sensors and other receptors, and then try to, from this massive stream of incoming information, detect signals for what is relevant, then use those to build up some kind of internal map, a world model, and kind of an abstract map, you can think of it, which represents objects. And you can then think of the properties of these objects. You could run counterfactual simulations in your head. What would happen if you drop the glass? It would fall to the floor, it would get wet. And you can then have some mechanism of your brain, the limbic systems and other regions that are then involved in evaluating these different outcomes by reference to some kind of implicit evaluation function. So we have a simple reinforcement learning program that's like pain, very analogous to the reinforcement learning programs we use in AI systems in many cases today. And we have other forms of learning that gradually build up an increasingly information-rich and complex world model that we can then use to navigate the world. And that whole thing is kind of agnostic as to the hardware that it's implemented on. Obviously, if you have more memory and a faster processor, you've got to be able to do better. But whether it's implemented on a quantum device or a classical device is, I think, neither here nor there.
So you're saying that the theory of intelligence actually overlapped the theory of information. So, but if it's that true, we should be already more advanced. And honestly, I'm an AI supporter. I did research for some time now. I support more the business side. But I don't see actually the system even we use, they're very useful, being very, very actually intelligent, right? I think they are like smart street in the best
Well,
manner.
I mean, I guess it compares to if you say the glass is half full or half empty. Certainly, if we look, say, at where we were 20 years ago, the capabilities then compared to the things we take for granted now, I think it's quite amazing how much progress has been made with these deep neural network approaches and the machine learning approach in particular. And I expect continued rapid progress over the next 20 years.
Okay. Somebody else want to comment on this? Have a different opinion or?
I have a different opinion.
Okay, please.
So for me, quantum is crucial for consciousness, and not for one reason, but for many reasons. Quantum entanglement plays a pivotal role in generating new qualia from qualia by superposition. So generating, for example, the qualia of left and right from up and down. And with entanglement, you can get exponentially, more than exponentially, many new qualia that are the thoughts from elementary qualia. So the possibility of generating a huge new kind of qualia is ensured by quantum entanglement and superposition. Then we have the free will, which can be regarded in terms of quantum randomness, because this cannot be interpreted classically as lack of knowledge. So we have a conceptual motivation for the free will. And in this sense, in principle, cannot be predicted by anybody, predicted methodologically. Then, as Federico already mentioned, the fact that experience is not shareable here is guaranteed. As a consequence of the quantum no cloning theorem, maybe you have heard about, or the principle of no information without disturbance. So this means that if I want to read your thoughts, I would unavoidably change them. But for example, I can upload them if I don't make a copy, but I just upload them from one device to another, from one person to another. In principle, I can do that. Then another crucial motivation for quantum consciousness is the fact that it solves the combination problem of panpsychism, because the conscious system individuation criterion for us is the purity or the joint state. If we consider a subsystem is marginal state of a component, system is mixed due to entanglement. So when you have a joint state of many systems, you focus on some of them, their state is not pure anymore. And it makes no sense because it is not a nontic notion, it's an epistemic notion, the fact that you have a probability. There is no probability of a conscious experience in mind. I have only one conscious experience. There is no problem for the coherence. This is usually the criticism that was done to Roger and Penrose, because in our case, the long-term memory is not quantum, it's classical, and quantum is only the buffer of a short-term experience. Storing and recalling the memory involves quantum to classical and classical to quantum conversion with overall loss of quantum information. And you can improve this by attention, by making many copies of the same experience by attention. So there are too many motivations, and then it's a long, I'm saying you can read our papers, which is going to be to get out by press on a book of Springer, with Penrose, by the way, of the Springer.
I hope I can see it before. If you preprint, I would love to.
Oh yes, you can go to the archive and,
it's already
and put
archive. Okay.
put the name of Federico Faggin. Is the only paper of him.
The first.
Is the first.
Yeah, the first. Actually, I want
first.
to say one thing, because of course I'm not a physicist. I just studied very little. But quantum theory, first time, I was shocked when I thought, oh, maybe it's not proven or something. Then I read about it, and I remember for many months I was really impressed. That I read the sentence. I don't know if it was Bohr or Feynman. It said, anyone who's not shocked by quantum theory has not understood it, right? So yes. I thought I felt like, okay, means maybe I understood something enough enough to be shocked. And I have to say that of course right now it's a minority of people that believe that quantum affects there is a quantum dimension of the brain. But I have to say, if quantum exists in the universe, why should not influence human living as well? Maybe there is something we just don't see or don't know. So it's a very fascinating field to explore, and I believe there must be something there, because it would be weird if there was no connection at all, right? Filippo, do you have an opinion on the matter, or you abstain from it?
No, I have a strong opinion. Let me start from it.
Go.
So, as concerns AI, I don't share his optimism. I think that neural networks are hitting the wall. I mean, I'm using a sentence from Judea Pearl. It's just pure fitting. It's no more than pure fitting. And unless we want to reduce intelligence or consciousness to pure fitting, it's very difficult to think about AI today in terms of any kind of intelligence comparable to human intelligence. AI today is just pattern recognition, and it can be easily proved by the fact that AI is not able to deal with problems such as, for instance, analogical reasoning or creativity. And this is one side of the answer.
Washing dishes too.
Washing dishes too.
Yeah, the robot cannot wash dishes, right?
Anyway, and that concerns the quantum dimension of the brain. I'm not sure about what we are talking, because brain intelligence are totally different concepts. I mean, there is no naked brain and there is no naked mind. Again, I'm always repeating the same concept. I mean, we are embodied in this body, and our categorization of the world depends on the physiological mechanism, biological mechanism, chemical mechanism behind this body. The categorization of the world that we have is completely different from the categorization of the world of a mosquito or a horse, simply because, for instance, the vision system of a mosquito or the vision system of a horse is completely different from ours. And moreover, we are embedded into a cultural linguistic system. And when I speak about cultural linguistic system, I mean not only languages, I mean, as I told before, traditions, rituals, metric systems, whatever. And finally, as I was saying, we are as well extended. For instance, think about a child. When children start to count, they use the fingers. They learn thanks to the body, thanks to these fingers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and so on. So I'm lost because I don't think we can talk about the intelligence, digital, quantum intelligence, to the extent that this intelligence doesn't come to be embodied and embedded into a cultural environment.
Yeah, I want to say, Filippo, there is one great truth you just mentioned. Actually, there's some neuro study now that actually show that all the columns in the brain are of the neurons are attached to a sensor function. There is not even a single column inside the brain that is not related to movement of the eyes, movement of the arm, any part. So it's like, it looks like motion is embedded in the functioning of the brain, right? So, and the current development of AI, it's based mostly on language, because we think with using language, like language would be the operative system of our brain. But in reality, language is one description, is not the reality, is a mode in an abstraction to describe the reality, to interact with the reality. But I don't think it doesn't correspond to the reality. So try to learn, understand the make intelligent system through the output. There is a lot of things to see, right? So the mechanism, the implicit, is actually going to be at an end. We can build a smart system, very useful machines, but not intel, not with the current knowledge. I think there is need for a new breakthrough, a large breakthrough. What we have now, I don't think it's sufficient. It's a different category. It's not like need just to work and evolve it, and develop it. We need an evolution event, something that completely different, right?
Yeah. You know, basically, artificial intelligence is mechanical intelligence. It's just a mechanism. There is nothing more and nothing less than a mechanism. But a mechanism doesn't have anything that supervises the mechanism. There is no whole that is more than the sum of the parts. Consciousness is that whole that is more than the sum of the parts. It's more than the sum of ourselves that can actually witness the functioning of the parts and comprehend the function of the parts and affect the parts top down. So this is a fundamental difference between a computer that has no whole. A computer is just a bag of parts, interacting parts, the sum of the parts. There is no whole as an entity that can feed back to the parts. And that is fundamental. That is the absolute difference that makes the difference that consciousness is.
I'd like to push back
sorry,
a little on a few of the...
Go ahead.
So I think we're at, some risk of trying to define various concepts that make it harder to see certain things rather than easier. So yes, of course, it's true that if we're looking at whether somebody, say some human is able to thrive and be successful, will depend a lot on the culture they're embedded in, their body, how that is perceived by others. And, obviously, if you don't have eyes, ears, or hands, or any ability to interact with the world, you're going to be pretty limited in what you can do. But it's also the case that basically the same brain is able to acquire, able to learn all these different cultural attributes. Like the same person, if they are brought up in one society, will learn the language there and able to figure out how to get around there. And if they're brought up in another place, the very same brain, the same basic intelligence is able to figure out that situation. So what I'm referring to as intelligence is not only sort of the finalized set of skills and pieces of knowledge that you have stored, but the learning ability, the ability to acquire this in an efficient way from limited information. And that seems to be this universal capacity that every normal human being is born with, and that over the course of 10 or 20 years then unfolds. And it seems like there's a wide range of different specific perceptual stimuli that you could have that would still give you enough information about the world that you basically, at the end, become an adult that has, you know, a shared understanding of physical objects and how to move your own body around, and the ability to communicate with people, including in other languages. There's enough commonality that we actually can have fruitful conversations. So I'm more struck about the invariances that arise. And we see even with something as alien to humans as, say, the computer AlphaGo, like it can still, even though it doesn't have cameras, it just has sort of a direct perception of the board, can become a very skilled competitor in that domain and in other domains where we have a kind of shared objective function. Without having to have a body and without having a mother and without having to have a lot of other things that,
yes,
that are
yeah, Nico, you're right.
images.
But the AlphaGo is not reality. It's an abstract game. Is an abstraction where there are rules that are pretty defined, which is not the case of reality. So, in fact, when you change a little bit the parameters, many successful, even the game inventors, AI, you just move the paddle for 2 pixels, and it cannot recognize the environment anymore. And one thing I want to comment what you said, it was very interesting, of course. But you were mentioning we have experience, we have intelligent behavior. But the fact that we are definitely, as a human, intelligent doesn't mean we understand intelligence. It's like I can give someone not expert of IT a mobile, and he can learn to use it very, very well, but he will never learn how to code just by using the mobile. Sometimes when I see all this process on LP, that's what I feel. Okay, you learn how to use, you mimic, but you don't understand how it works, how it functions.
That's certainly true. I mean, that we have a limited understanding of intelligence. That's kind of, I think, obvious, and in fact being demonstrated probably even by ourselves on this very panel.
Yes.
Now, I mean, it is true. AlphaZero can only play Go, but then, AlphaGo can only play Go, but AlphaZero, a later version, was able out of the box without fine tuning to learn to play also chess and checkers at a very high level. So clearly there is a more general ability. Now, of course, it can't already do everything that we humans can do. That is just to say AI has not yet fully succeeded in rendering humans obsolete, right? But I mean, it would be a mistake to say that because that hasn't happened yet, therefore somehow what the computers do is not on the same ladder of intelligence that would eventually lead to around where we are.
I get. Very, very interesting the concept. Anyone else want to? I think we already debated enough this first question. Actually, I was a small extension. Giacomo, if consciousness is a quantum phenomenon, then maybe the quantum computer could become conscious then.
I'm not sure, because quantum computer achieve transformations through unitary all the time, because this is the only way we are able to do transformations in the lab. Whereas the quantum consciousness achieve transformation directly. And I'm saying this is an old postulate of von Neumann that all transformations are achieved through unitary, but this is not true because it's not falsifiable within quantum theory, and it's just an historical thing. It's not falsifiable with a quantum falsification observation. So it's something additional, which is not really the case. So the transformation that are achieved by a quantum consciousness are atomic transformations, because they must preserve purity of the state of the conscious system, and but they are probabilistic. They are not deterministic like unitary, and they are achieved directly like that. So I think you have to think more about. This is a problem that Federico Faggin posed long time ago, but I think it may be not the same thing. So we need to perform we need the zoology of transformations that I'm not sure that can be done through unitary all the time. I'm not sure. I have to think about.
Okay, Federico, you have something to say? Because
yeah, I think that consciousness is one aspect of intelligence, but we also need free will, and we need identity. And so the kind of system that is conscious and has identity and has also free will is a much more sophisticated system than a quantum system that could only be conscious. So there may be conscious systems that are simply aware of their state, but that's it. They cannot direct their experience. We can direct our experience. Intelligence requires directing our experience. And to direct our experience, we need to have also a sense of unity, which comes from what I call identity. So identity is fundamental. So there are three fundamental aspects in order to have an intelligent being that can essentially have follow its own purpose and get meaning out of his experience. And identity, consciousness, and free will. And free will is possible within the framework that Giacomo has developed, the operational probabilistic theory, which is a theory of theories that can actually explain how quantum physics works by essentially considering quantum physics produced by quantum information. So quantum information is more fundamental than quantum physics. Quantum physics is more fundamental than classical physics. And consciousness, free will, and identity are more fundamental than quantum information. So now we start with a model in which the ontology of reality is in the experience and is in the movement toward purpose and meaning, which never existed before. And this is fundamental because a machine is aimless. Basically, we give him the aim by simply putting in the program whatever we want the machine to do. The machine does not have an identity of itself, does not have a self that can guide its direction. And comprehension comes from consciousness. Without consciousness, there is no comprehension. Comprehension is not algorithmic. Comprehension goes beyond algorithm. It is the same reason why you can have a system that becomes if you combine pure systems in quantum physics, you combine system in a pure state, you can have a new pure state that is no longer describable as the combination of those parts. This is what Giacomo earlier was talking about, that solves the fundamental problem of panpsychism, which is how do you explain that when you have systems interacting with each other, you create a system that is more than the parts. That can only occur within quantum physics. There is nothing in classical physics that can do that. And the property that is foundational for that is entanglement. Entanglement only exists in quantum physics. And so this whole thing ties together in a beautiful way. And that's why, it can really explain the intuition that we have, that the machines are just machines. They don't have a witness of their own operation, of their own activity, of their own direction, and they have no sense of meaning. That is, they're simply doing what they're programmed to do. And the learning that you get with artificial neural network is simply correlations. That's it. There is nothing more. Correlations. In other words, the data itself has to have that information. but the computer doesn't know how to get to situation in which it gets more data. The comprehension is what allows you to go
something beyond data,
where you are.
Yeah. I think before, so basically you're saying that the consciousness is really entangled. We use this word now from quantum with intelligent, right? Before Filippo at the beginning, he promised that he was going to elaborate on concept that was really interesting. He actually said that consciousness is a modern concept, and so I think it would be interesting to see a little bit more of the philosophical side. Filippo, can you elaborate more on that? Because actually, I guess it will bring us to a different approach.
The weakness, if I can find the weakness of this talk, is exactly all about the notion of consciousness. Because I said before, it's a very modern notion. It appears basically with Descartes and then Leibniz and so on. But there is an Italian philosopher, I'm sure you know him, Giorgio Agamben, which always speaks about archaeological vigilance. So we should always keep a look towards the past. And if you look at the past, I'm talking about ancient philosophy, Greek philosophy, Middle Age philosophy, the scholastics, we will find that the word consciousness does not appear if not in juridical text, in legal text. And it's interesting because consciousness comes from the Latin conscientia. And the etymology of this word is from scire, which means knowing, and cum, the preposition cum, means knowing together. It's a shared knowledge. So from the point of view of the Middle Age, consciousness was basically the moral consciousness. So better to say, I would avoid to use even the word moral. I would say it's the ethical consciousness. And this marks a deep distinction between before and after Descartes. And honestly speaking, starting from a philosopher like Wittgenstein, then another philosopher like Ryle, which was a student of Wittgenstein, by the way, I had problems to understand what consciousness is. I mean, it's an ontological entity. It's a cognitive process. It's not clear to me exactly what consciousness is, at least from my modest point of view.
Okay, all right.
Well,
anyone want to comment?
Yes, I want to make a comment that the consciousness as a name may be recent, but if you go back even the Bible, the I am that I am, that apparently is what Moses heard. that I am that I am is a statement of consciousness.
So self-awareness.
Sorry. One question to Federico. So archaeological vigilance means asking ourselves as well why consciousness was never an issue, was never a topic, was never a question until Descartes.
Well, I don't know. I would say that Descartes clearly made a clear, a clear statement, and also a clear distinction, which I don't consider valid because I don't think that there is a dualism. But he's the one that brought to bear the understanding of, in a sense, of the functioning versus the being. And so that, in his way of saying it, cogito ergo sum, there is a sense that there is something special. Consciousness is not a functioning like Giacomo was mentioning earlier, is really a state of being. It is beingness. It is the existence of, essentially, the existence of something that knows that it exists. I mean, this is amazing. I mean, do you think that a machine knows that it exists?
Absolutely not. I agree with you.
There you go. So there you go. That's what consciousness does. Consciousness allows you to know that you exist.
But do you think that a private language exists? This is the point.
No, but I agree completely with you that human intelligence is founded on social phenomena. In fact, my model of reality sees language as reality. Reality is based on language. Actually, look at what quantum physics does. Quantum physics describes reality. It doesn't describe reality. It describes what we can know about reality. Quantum physics is purely epistemic. Okay, so reality goes beyond the description of the best science that we have, which is quantum physics. So the essence of reality is the experience of conscious entities. So reality is made of many realities, the realities of all the entities that experience. So, I mean, we have something fundamental here. We have a new way of looking at reality. Reality, we look at objective reality, which is what we have in this space-time, but that's only part of reality, only the reality which manifests in the display, which is our space-time. Space-time is like a display. The lights that go on and off are the particles, what we call particles. But there is more to the particles that go on and off. There is the experience behind.
We are working together with a professor from Fudan University, an Italian professor called Antonino Marciano. We are working on a paper about topological quantum neural networks, in which we are using topological quantum field theory in order to build a quantum neural network. So I understand perfectly what you're saying, but my point is basically a philosophical one. So I have strong doubts about any possible definition of the notion of consciousness. So it's like talking about a ghost.
Look, Filippo, clearly, do I believe that consciousness is exactly the way I define it? Absolutely not. Particularly when we talk about this type of stuff, reality is holistic. There are no boxes. And if you don't have any box, you cannot define the box, because the box can only be defined if it is bounded, and you can define what's inside the box. And many of the concepts that come with consciousness, intelligence, emotions, and so on, they cannot be put into a box. Therefore, they cannot be defined properly. And we have to accept that. The problem is that most scientists believe that you have to define the thing in a way that nothing can be outside or inside, beyond what nothing can be inside that you haven't defined. That is impossible. So we have to go with a completely different way to understanding, which goes beyond intellectual understanding. It is a full understanding that includes our physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual dimensions. That's how we know. We know by experiencing. We do not know by intellectualizing. That is the fundamental difference. And if we believe that artificial intelligence is what we have and what we are, then we are reducing man to a machine, and that is a sin.
Okay.
I totally agree about this point. I was making clear this point when talking with
No, I understand, but I speak also to the audience.
Actually, I don't know.
I speak also to the people that are listening to us that are asking the same questions. They are deep questions.
AI today is what you say. It's just pure fitting. It's just finding correlations.
Yeah.
Pattern. That's all. No more.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, guys, sorry to interrupt you, because I love the passion, really, and it was really interesting, and to see also the not just to follow the thought. It was very interesting, and I think it was the audience will find very stimulating. But unfortunately, I think we ran out of time. So I really want to thank you for your contribution today, and I hope we can have another chance to talk about these topics. And I thank you again for coming, all of you. And I hope also the people who are watching right now, they are enjoying the debate, and maybe they can search more information about you and your idea. Okay, so thank you again. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I would like to receive the papers from Giacomo and Federico.
Oh, you too. Okay, one more, plus one. Okay, okay, great.
Sure.
Thank you so much, all of you, and thank you for to participate today. Okay, bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks to you. Bye.
Bye.